Seat at My Table podcast. Today I'm joined by SJ or Sharla-Jaye Duncan, and I'm really excited for this conversation because she's achieved so much, whether it's founding charity and also businesses under the name of Day One and Journi as well. You've also got a TED Talks, which I saw recently.
You've done your homework.
And so I'm really excited to just dive into so many things. But I love to start the conversation with asking you, how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
3 words. Oh, I'm going to have to take a moment to think about this.
Of course.
I'm going to cheat with the first one, fun-loving. So I wouldn't say I'm fun, that's someone else to describe me as, but I love to have fun.
Okay.
And to whatever I do, have fun. The second is another cheat because it's a hybrid word, mission-driven.
Okay.
So yeah, I get out of bed and I just think kind of a lot of the time, what's my purpose, what's my mission? And if that doesn't feel right, I'm normally not myself. So mission driven. And what's the third one? Friends call me gregarious, so I enjoy people. Yeah. And my partner's a big introvert, and I didn't realise like how much of an extrovert I am until I met him in lockdown. I was like, oh yeah, I am on that side of the scale. So yeah, they're my 3 words.
That's good. And gregarious is such a good word. You hear it so rarely, but
it's a smart friend told me the word, and I had to look it up. I was like, oh yeah. So you've just made me look smart. Thank you.
I think mission driven makes a lot of sense when you look at your journey, not to use the pun because I've done your business called Journi, but you can see a thread throughout everything you do with your mission in mind, which we'll come to. I think what I would love to start off with though is going back to younger SJ, so back to school. And you know, I've done a bit of research, so I've seen how you got inspired, but I'd love to, for the audience, go back to younger you and what your day-to-day looked like at school. Do you like going to school? Or
good question. Yeah, you say day-to-day at school. That was when I was there. Didn't go to school much. It's funny because many people, when they share their story, especially coming from my community, normally have an affinity to crime or something like that. But for me, it wasn't. I was just like in the middle, not high performer, not going to school, not particularly interested. And the biggest thing I think is I couldn't connect my current day as a young person to my future. And I guess that comes back to the mission driven. So if I couldn't see that, I just didn't see the point. But I was really lucky. I met someone who's one of my best friends today, Bovan, and she came from a very middle-class family, wanted to be a doctor then, is a doctor today. Brother's a city lawyer. And she transferred to my school, and it was through that friendship and going to her house after school that it was like you just took me from one environment and put me into a completely different environment, and I therefore became a different person or expressed different parts of myself better still. And I think it was an early life lesson, which is if you take people and put them in different environments, the possibilities are limitless. Was very, very fascinated at a young age by that.
Yeah, I think that's amazing because, you know, some people grow up in a certain situation and they then believe that what they're capable of or what their life is going to look like is based on that moment in time. And it's so liberating to think actually maybe it's a change in perspective or a change in environment that could unlock a whole new world. It's not stagnant or set in stone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's such an empowering moment. And I'd love to talk about, it's a family. I read a biography about you, and also your TED Talks about you talk about coming from a family of, I think you're one of 7, had loads of cousins, and there's something you said about how there was more people going to jail than actually finishing school with GCSEs. Yeah. So I'd love to dive in a bit more on how your family saw education and how also what I think is interesting, going back to what you mentioned, you almost just didn't, it wasn't that you were rebelling against education, it was almost just that you didn't link the importance to it. So I'd love to talk a bit more about your environment around younger you.
Yeah, thank you. I think, so the stats are right? Got 6 siblings, some of which are half. And I think it was when you look at the part of society that I grew up in, it's quite interesting because it was a bunch of hard workers. So yeah, a bunch of like really, really hard workers, really ambitious, want to do well economically and financially, but were stifled. So my dad came over from Jamaica at quite a young age. Mum was born here. And as far as I know, like neither of them did well academically and went straight into work at a young age. And that was it, right? But my mum in particular I could see the restlessness even as a 10-year-old when she was in her 40s, the restlessness to want to take us out of a particular environment, out of a particular postcode and put us somewhere else. And through that frustration, she made some left turns, which didn't end up well, similar to my dad. And at the time, I was really embarrassed by it, like to go to school and to know that your parents are in a particular situation and your parents, your teachers aren't allowed to know, your friends really shouldn't know. It was a bit, and then you start to define yourself by that. It was a bit embarrassing. But in hindsight, having a few decades behind my belt now, I realized actually it was desperation that caused them to do the things that take the turns that they did, which didn't end up well for them or for my siblings or for me. I've forgotten your question because I'm talking a lot.
It's the context around it. So how your family saw school and the situation with, I guess, how you saw the lack of importance of education. And I guess to extend this question as well, I saw where you said, you saw your siblings doing well, surviving, and they didn't graduate with grades. And so you were kind of like, well, I'll survive then,
Absolutely. And I think when you think about education, it's not that my parents didn't see education as important, they just didn't have the bandwidth to enforce it, right? So if anyone said to my mum or dad, should she be in school, should she be studying, should she be doing homework, the answer would be yes, yes, yes. But that is for most parents the difference between, in my opinion, high achieving educational families and those who don't cut it are the ability for parents to be home to enforce particular beliefs or to even show up as in those ways, right? Were my parents reading around the home? Were they having discussions? No. And that's what I saw in my friend's household that weren't in mine. Was it by choice? No. Again, mum, most of the time we spent with each other, we were doing cleaning jobs. Like she was working around the clock. So did she have time to come home and say, bring your red book, let me sign your homework off or whatever? No, absolutely not. So, education was lip service, but not through choice. I think it was by design of just the fact that they had so much to do to pay the bills, to put food on the table, etc., that by the time it came to that part of important life and growing, supporting their kids, it just didn't happen. It just was like bedtime, right?
Yeah.
And I think that has permeated through my family, and it's been something as a new parent myself I've been really conscious of and thinking, how do I show up and not just talk about the things? Because I think we all know what good looks like. We all know how to eat well. We all know how to study well. We all know how to be a good person to other people. It's not the knowledge that actually fails us. It's the time and the dedication and effort that we put into being those things. So that was a real life lesson. When I went to Bovan's house, we'd eat dinner and then open the Times newspaper and we'll talk about politics and we'll talk about what's going on in particular parts of the world and bring that home. And then we'll talk about the today of our homework, etc. And just observing that, it was just like, oh gosh, like different families really do operate differently. And I was so lucky to have that exposure in a way that none of my siblings did. So was able to be exposed to something that I didn't think was possible or even existed.
Yeah. And I think this also shows the power in being introduced to people with different perspectives and different experiences, because it also isn't necessary that one is worse or better than the other, because at the end of the day, you form a certain type of person that could learn so much. For example, the work ethic of seeing your mum work around the clock and, that brings different things. But it just shows how much your world can open up when you get a glimpse into other people's experiences. And actually, I'd love to talk a bit more about the first time you met. Is it Bhavan?
Yeah, Bhavan.
Yeah. And because I can imagine at the beginning when you weren't that interested in education, then you had someone who'd had it so ingrained that was so important. It seems like quite an unlikely friendship.
Yeah.
And so how was that dynamic? And then maybe how did that inspire Team Up?
Yeah, I think so Bhavan, her unfortunate circumstance was my fortune. I think parents lost a bit of money, so she left a private school and came to my school. But she'd done so well and she was so close to achieving, you know, getting A stars coming out of her ears. I think it was a sensible decision for her family situation at the time. So, but 2 years prior to that, we both did athletics and I met her through like local athletics. I was like, oh, I remember you when she came to my school. And then the second part of our Venn diagram is the school I went to was very white working class. So I think it was 16% pass rate at the time. So most people failed. But very, very like, you know, the stats around white working class boys, we were the poster child for the underachieving kind of parts of the UK that don't do well. And with the kind of white working class demographic. And because of that, it was quite, no, I wouldn't say because of white working class, it was racist, but it was a very racist school. So independent of it being white working class. But because of that, she was ethnic minority. So she was Asian, I'm Black, and we had that kind of connection. It was like, oh, okay, you don't belong here either. Okay, cool, we can be friends. And so that became a bit of a middle ground, a bit of more middle ground, more common ground. And the beauty of it is that she lived 5 minutes away from the school, so it was easy to hang out at hers after school. I'm going way off and forgetting your question, so bring me back. But
this is perfect. It's when you first met and what that dynamic was like between you two and the influence that she then had to then lead you on to team up.
That was it. Yeah. So hanging out at hers every day after school. She's got a strong personality. She did then, and that's not changed about her. And so if she saw something, she didn't like it, she'll call it. And she saw it early. She was like, you're not studying. We're 2 years away from our GCSEs. You haven't done X, Y, and Z coursework. Like, what are you doing with your life? And at that age, it's not really cool to be, well, again, from my worldview at that age, it wasn't cool to really call people out on that, right? And I call it positive peer pressure. It was cooler to get people into smoking weed or doing credit card scams or doing, do you know what I mean? Things that were, for whatever reason, cool at that time. But she was really like a breath of fresh air because she was like, I'm going here, and if you want to spend my time on a friendship, like, just know that that's where I'm going, so come with me or not, but either way, I'm calling you out on something I observe. So we used to just spend time going over things. And obviously it was a friendship and we were still 14, 15. So there were all the other parts of, you know, immature, young, silly girls having fun. But it was the first time that there was a real strong element of someone so driven that it just reverberated around them and you couldn't be in their space unless you were thinking in that way. I remember once she said to me like 3 times over the weekend, you coming to school next week? Yeah. You sure you come to school yet? Yeah. And then I woke up and for whatever reason, I woke up too late, the bus, whatever rubbish excuse I gave. And she just stopped talking to me. She was like, it was almost, she didn't say the words because she was too young, so didn't express it as such. But in her way, she was like, you've got no integrity. Like you said you were going to do something, you haven't done it. You don't show up for things. And that for me was a real pain because I was so used to doing that with teachers or when the council came around and said you haven't gone to school, so saying the yes to get people off my back. But it wasn't until someone who genuinely cared, because they had nothing to gain from me showing up, that I thought, wow, there are people around you who really check for you and really want you to do well. So I'd say Team Up came from observing someone who just lived a different life and that being a fresh air, but also standing for that and like calling me out, to inspiring me to kind of follow that direction. So I did my GCSEs, did incredibly well, did my A-levels, did even better, was invited to Oxford Uni to kind of spend the summer and like almost really strongly encouraged to do chemistry there. And when I got my A-levels, I, in hindsight, probably should have gone to Oxford as an undergrad, but I wanted to stay in London with my roots. Anne Boven went to King's College London, so I wanted to go to where she was going. So end up at King's, and King's is in South London, not far from here. And I grew up in South London, so I know it like the back of my hand. And the thing that really surprised me was it was almost like going from Elephant and Castle, Camberwell, over a bridge, and then ending up in a very different, again, class and race demographic. Like the elephant at the, I don't know if it's still there, but the elephant at the shopping centre at Elephant and Castle symbolised something to me. Like it was my local shops, it was the things that I knew. And then like 10 minutes later, you're in this completely different business district with people operating differently. And I thought there's something really wrong with this, because I didn't have to travel. If I went to Oxford as an undergrad, that might have been different, because I'd felt that 60-minute journey. Yeah, would make me think, oh, maybe there's, but it's not. It's a 10-minute walk. So something's really up with equality, social mobility, London, and it's all on one doorstep. So that's when I was inspired to be the Boven to other young people in local schools. So as I was walking here outside, came outside of Bermondsey Station and was like, oh, St Michael's School. That was one of the schools I went to and tutored. But my first school was in Vauxhall, tutored a small group of girls, maths and chemistry, the subjects I was good at and loved. And the head teacher, a brilliant guy called Gary, was like, right, see you next week. And it just grew from there. Went back to the African Caribbean Society at King's College London, pitched to other people and said, look, if you love your subject at uni, and even if you don't, like teach it, right? Inspire another young person, let someone else see what you've achieved, go into an incredible university, coming from a similar ethnic background, and for many of them coming from a similar class background. So that was the kind of seeds at King's College London. Did more of that than went to lectures, but I did pass and I did study. Learnt that at least. And it grew to LSE, it grew to Imperial, it grew to UCL through a student-led society. And yeah, was just really it was just a great experience. Again, it was so connected to my own story and the things that got me to university that it was a no-brainer. So then just kind of the second part of Team Up was I went to do my postgrad at Oxford, tested the model there because it was a very different demographic and the outcomes were exceptional. So I just applied for some funding to run the charity, which I did for the next 10 years.
Wow. It's just amazing because it seems like in such a short amount of time, so much changed for you. So if you go back to when you were younger, you went from not even really caring about being at school to then all of a sudden doing well enough to have been able to go to Oxford for your undergrad, and then being at university and creating this network, but also inspiring people to care enough to then pass that on as well. Because it's one thing to go and tutor yourself, it's another thing to mobilize loads of people to go and do that. And that's also a powerful thing that not everyone has the skill to do or the vision and mission to do. And I just love the idea that someone was so driven themselves, it reverberated off of them and had such impact. And like you said, there was no kind of benefit for her other than, I guess, the pain of seeing someone she cared about not reaching the same level of success as her. And I just think everyone needs a Boven in their life. You
put it so well, by the way, because when you live it, you don't see it. But when you replay, when someone else replays it, it's powerful. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Also, can I just say it's so perfect, this story, because it just fits in so well with what we were talking about before we came in here about my podcast and what I think, or the power that I'm trying to deliver is, seeing is believing. So getting people like yourself and giving other people access to them and their stories so that they can then think it's possible for themselves. And I think what is so powerful about Team Up is that exactly what you're doing. You're giving people this vision that they could then lean into and almost have a direction to go in. Because if you haven't seen that, you're kind of just going about your life thinking, like taking it day by day, aren't you?
Yeah.
So then, obviously, you didn't just stop at Team Up. You have then gone on to create Journi and Day One, and from my understanding, they're kind of interlinked as well. Almost tackling the same mission, but different areas of that mission. And so I'd love to go into then what made you start those. Was it also simultaneously to Team Up, or was it kind of one after the other?
So I ran Team Up for 10 years. Supported 15,000 kids that outperformed private school kids when you looked at their distance travelled. And I was very clear about what got me out of bed, right? What parts of running an organization got me out of bed, what parts I needed to outsource because I was no good at or not inspired by. But what I realized 10 years in was, even though our kids were doing exceptionally well, I'd bump into some of them 10 years later for some of them and say, what are you up to now? And I still didn't see the level of social mobility I expected, right? So I'd meet a young person, say, so-and-so, wow, I remember you did so well, blah, 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 blah. What are you up to now? And I'd still hear the new version of a lack of social mobility. I'm a delivery driver. Oh, I work at my local Tesco's, etc., Ladbrokes, etc. So I was like, oh, that's a shame, because I know you did well at school, right? I was there. And that's where Day One, which was the precursor and still connected to Journi, came from. I wanted to create a similar organization that produced outstanding results for young people, but getting them into careers, because Team Up was focused on one thing: let's get you doing where you are at school. And because at the way in which it grew, I knew that was what it was good at, and I didn't want to dilute that mission. So I stepped down from Team Up. I still sit on the board, though. It's still my first baby. And set up Day One to answer the question: can I get a programmatic approach to getting inspiring individuals, coaching, mentoring, supporting young people, but with the view to get them into careers? And how Journi came about as a result of that. So that was my vision, right? That was like, all right, next 10 years, this is what I'm going to do. But then I had to check myself, because when I started Day One, I realized that there were people coming to us who were 5, 10, 15, 20 years into their career who were like, actually, as a woman, I've had the glass ceiling and I can't see myself rising. So it was a double-edged sword, because they were like, I'm really passionate to support this cause, partly because of my own stunted growth. And I was like, well, then you need help as well, right? So that was one reason. And then the second was young people, if they were going into the workplace and they didn't see themselves at the top, they were like, oh, this is all good and all, but not my, no thanks, right? So, and that's proven by the data. You get a significant younger number of young people from social mobility backgrounds getting into well-paid corporates, financial services, tech, etc. But then the revolving door's massive, right? They get 3 years in and they feel like they're in a toxic environment, or they feel like they're being blocked by their manager or just not heard, and they leave, right? And if they're lucky, they might have some situations that they can go back to and earn a similar or not too dissimilar salary in a startup or whatever. But most of them actually just leave. So Journi, as the name suggests, took Day One and pushed it through the entire life cycle. Can we support women? Can we support social mobility professionals? Can we support Black heritage professionals to get from Day One to the boardroom? Let's not stop at just getting them in. Let's actually get them designing and shaping and making decisions about the corporates that run our country. So that's what Day One started as, and it still exists to do. And then that's where Journi kind of came out from, which is about the rest of the career life cycle.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, because, like I said, it's not good enough to just get people in. There has to be the correct environment, and also they have to have the correct tools to then make up to higher levels where they can then create change.
Absolutely.
And I think it is such a slow process, because I think you hit on something really perfect there. It's almost like, they get a certain amount of time in, and it might be that they don't get fired, or like they can still stay there, but it's a toxic environment, because there are so few people that look like them, because it isn't designed to help them thrive. I've actually spoken to a number of people of this on this podcast, and it's almost the energy of having to fit a certain mold in the workplace, because there aren't other people that look like you. So it's just exhausting and not very enjoyable. And it is kind of that battle to support people getting to that level kind of long enough so that then they can create that change.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, as someone who runs a business, you want some exceptional, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I'll swear anyway, shit hot people to run your functions, right? And the saying goes, like, talent is everywhere, opportunity isn't. But if you get the top 20% of whatever group, I don't care, men, women, live in South London, live in Oxford, top 20% of any demographic, that's who I want to be competing for. But employers are really missing a trick if they're not finding the top 20% of women, the top 20%, and pushing them through and say, you decide what goes on in this country because you've got the capability and intelligence to do so. So I think it's a win-win. And I think I'm going to answer a question you haven't asked. In the last 5 years, we've had an interesting experience with inclusion diversity, right? Big push in 2020, especially post George Floyd. Last 2 years, especially with Donald Trump being re-elected, we've had the pendulum swing in the other direction. And I think if you really want to make change, you want to seek to understand what the other side's asking. So I've done a lot of thinking around what is it that is pushing this pendulum back. And I think it's because we haven't branded it correctly. Because like Donald Trump as a former businessman, politician now, if you just said, can I just get you the best people in your company? He will never say no to that. But I think there's been a lot of drama and a lot of politics and a lot of right and wrong on both sides, actually, that has caused us to be in this difficult situation where some groups feel threatened, even though they're a majority. Some groups now feel silenced, and we're just in this kind of cold war with it all. Whereas I'm still excited, I'm still energized, and I'm even more excited than I was 5 years ago, because now more than ever, the UK needs shit hot talent running our country and running our businesses. And actually we're missing a trick if we're silencing some groups and not letting them in the party. So I don't know what the question was, and I'm going to answer any question that comes to mind. But that's why Journi, I think, really matters and is more relevant now than ever.
Yeah. And I love that. And I can feel the kind of excitement and hope kind of radiating off of you, which is so amazing. I think it's people who have hope that actually end up making that change.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't, it's a bit like if you don't believe you can see yourself somewhere, what's the point? If you don't believe you can make change, you kind of think, what's the point? Exactly. You never do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful message to go into this swing of the pendulum, because I think so many people are disheartened.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is tough because you think, well, it's just the right thing to include people.
Yeah.
But like sometimes you do have to frame in an economic way to tap into people.
Yeah.
And actually one of my questions was going to be, do you, when you have been growing Journi and, you know, reaching out, because I think you have partnered with 100 UK businesses, which is incredible.
Oh, thanks.
You know, do you find yourself convincing people that this is important, or do you find that people don't have to be convinced, they're quite aware that this is an important mission? What is the reaction?
Yeah. Are you asking about today or throughout the life cycle of the organisation?
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Today, unfortunately, you've really got to, I wouldn't say, I think people get nervous. Like you've got the human that goes into the workplace, and in order to be and recognizes, actually, I need to keep my job, I need to pay my bills, I need to look after my family, so I'm just going to follow the grain, right? Whatever that grain looks like. And then you've got the human outside of the workplace, which is, I care about the world. I've got a son, I've got a daughter, I've got issues that world issues that I don't want them to face themselves. And when you're meeting with people, you're normally meeting, from my world, with the workplace person who just wants to keep the status quo, keep under the radar, not get caught up in the next round of redundancies, not, all of the stuff that goes on in the mind around kind of people's nervousness, especially in this economic climate. So that was different from 5 years ago, right? So now we keep the message very focused on, you're a financial services or you're a technology outfit. I can see that you are looking to recruit director levels at X, Y, and Z. How long has that vacancy been open for? Okay. How about you coach some people in my community? How about you go out and meet people that I know aren't in your pipeline because they've never heard of you, right? And I know who you haven't got visibility of because you're still recruiting from the same old circles. So it doesn't tug on their heartstrings in the way that we could 5 years ago, and is the right thing to do. And there's a reason why I'm really in this. It speaks to their next commercial milestone, which is, you can't grow your AI team because you haven't got the AI talent, and I've got a bunch of people who are committed to advancing themselves in that sphere, or tech, or whatever it might be. Let me dovetail into your hiring needs. And people do respond well to that. I think it's probably the wrong thing to say, but I'll say it anyway. As a Black female who already has a brand, they still get nervous. right? So I think I could be a white man just talking about recruitment, and they'll be like, oh, cool, yeah, get it, done. But because of the political sphere that we're in, and I don't blame anyone. I don't think they're racist or sexist. I just think they're nervous. They see a black female and they know what's happened in the last 5 years, and they know that they've got a base in America, and they know that they don't want to get into that drama. So they're kind of really awkward about it. And I'm hopeful, to use your term, that the next 5 years will just do away with a lot of that.
Yeah.
Because as humans, we go around in cycles, right? We get fearful, then we get hopeful, then we get fearful, then we get hopeful. We're in a fearful phase. And I just think, I know that Journi will weather the storm because we've had enough business and customers and relationships to be able to do that. But I really feel for other organizations in this time that have to kind of adapt and have to think about how they do that quickly because of, day-to-day business issues like cash burn and all of that stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's really nice to hear you talk about it in such an understanding way and almost take it into the mind of the people that you're speaking to, of like that fearful, like, you're not kind of demonizing them and saying, they just don't care about these issues. Because I think it can be so easy to feel that way and be like, come on, like it's just the right thing to do, what you're playing at. But obviously you do have people who are thinking of their own survival and their family's survival first and foremost.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's a really amazing thing just to highlight that you said you spent a lot of time thinking about what they needed to then be able to actually make that change. I think it's so easy as someone who's passionate about something to just see why it's so important and almost just kind of throw it at people.
Yeah.
But obviously really good leaders understand how to reach people and what kind of where they are at and what they're thinking about and their motives.
You're right. I think it comes from two places. I think the first is one of my favorite books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand and then be understood. So I think it's something that I've always had to do, whether it's with family or with friends or whatever, conflict or issues you want to kind of iron out. Seeking first to understand is really where it's at. But I think equally as importantly is the groups that I represent. If I were to talk about the flip side of what we could do better is we're more powerful than we think we are. So as a woman, if a man says something sexist, if I feel powerless, I will get angry because I will feel like the power is with him, and anger is the only tool I can use to overcome him. I know my power. I know my value. If someone's sexist, they're ignorant. Like they really need to be educated and brought on a journey. And there's no one who's so powerful that I need to succumb to and I need to suppress who I am. You can be paying my bills. Someone else will pay my bills, right? So I think one thing that I've learned is anger actually is a tool that actually dissipates power. And I think we've seen it play out when we get angry as groups. I get the anger and I appreciate it and I embrace it. And in my worst moments, I do get angry. It's not an emotion that's not human, but let's channel that because we are way more powerful than we think we are, right? Like the Black Heritage mission that I've supported over the last 5 years through Journi, we've gone from a tiny percentage of the UK population to 13% of London. We're powerful. Like we don't need to get angry. We don't. Like we can withdraw our business if we want to. We can use other tools to actually create change. And I think one of the powerful tools is pulling up a seat, understanding, and then speaking in someone else's language. So so I think it's an approach we need to take actually quite urgently because the fear is coming out of the anger and the backlash that's happened in the last few years that people feel like they're being threatened, which they're not. We just want a better society for everyone.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the most powerful things I've ever heard someone say.
No, stop!
Honestly, I think that's so, like, I will literally be thinking about that for such a long time. Just the fact that once you understand your own power, it takes away any sort of power or strength in someone who undermines that because it can't touch you.
You're too powerful for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You almost brush it off and you can almost just feel compassion. Like you said, they are ignorant.
Yeah.
And what a shame that you haven't been able to experience the power that I could offer you, you know?
Spot on. Yeah. And And sometimes that ignorance it is malicious. Like, I'm not saying everyone who says something sexist or racist, they just don't know what they're doing. You know what you're doing, but you feel powerless. And that's why you think you need to use that tool. So I'm not going to play the game because I'm not at your level on an emotional level, and I'm not at your level on a need you level. So, you know, you can either rise or we can have a discussion. But I really do think that if we start to recognize our power, we'll leave the toddler crying over there and just go do something else. Like, go work for an organization that values me and loves me, and that I can really chime and, you know, play, you know, good ball with in terms of work.
That's amazing. And I think when it comes to other people who are mission driven or who have a purpose and want to make a change, like, you see people who might be really passionate about things but might not have the confidence or almost get paralyzed by the first step. I'd love to ask you, as someone who has founded charities and businesses, if you had to do it again or you had to break it down for someone, what would you say the first steps are? Because I think there's probably so much potential, but people just don't know how to make that first move.
Yeah, good question. You said something earlier that I've never said, but it was about my history, and I thought, wow, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. You said looking at my mum's work ethic was a bit of a privilege. Like, I can't remember what language you used, but I was like, oh yeah, that's really true. And I think I think to add to that, the chaotic environment that I was raised in was a great privilege, because that's what startup life is. You don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, right? You just don't know whether you're going to get 100 grand land on the table or going to have to give 100 grand back. You know, like, startup is just so topsy-turvy. And I think a privilege of mine is because I've had such topsy-turvy upbringing, it doesn't really faze me. At Team Up, I made a decision to scale too quickly in a year. And our COO at the time, who is now one of my best friends, we were like, it was, I don't know, 11 o'clock, whatever time at night. And she stopped and she said, I've never really seen you stressed. Like, are you not stressed, right? Because she knew I was going to be there all night. Yeah. And I stopped and I looked back at some of the other chapters in life that I've had to overcome. And I just said, this is tough, but it's light work. Like, compared to the other things that I've gone through, it's light work. Yeah. So in answer to your question, one, recognize that it's going to be tough, right? Startups are the reason why they're hard is because they're so unknown, and you're stabbing into the unknown, and 90% fail. Be okay with that. You're not defined by a startup. If you fail 5 times, are you still a good human being? Are you still showing up for your friends? Are you still showing up for yourself? Are you still a great daughter or mother, whatever that is? If the answer to those important parts of life are yes, then fail 6 times, right? So don't build your identity around a startup, because they're so likely to fail that you're just going to cripple yourself. So that's the first. The second is there's a brilliant guy called Jonathan Quinn, and he summed it up. He's just one of those people that you say 100 words and he'll just give you like 3 words. He started, I think it was World First, a tech company, and sold it very successfully. And his motto, I don't know where he got it from, is start small, think big, act fast. And I was like, that's my life. Oh my God, that's my life. And that's it. Start small. You want to build a tech platform, go get some white labeled software and play around with that. Do it on a spreadsheet if you can, right? Think big. Don't think that the spreadsheet's all you got. Like, you know where you want to be in 3 years. You want to be the biggest AI tech company. Fine, right? Continue to think big, because that's going to get you out of bed. But act fast. And people often call me impatient, but it's not. It's just like, I want to take this small step and I want to test it and I want to learn, I want to go. So I think they're the 2 big buckets that have kept me through. When I'm failing, which I often do, I don't define myself by it, which I did actually. Early days of Team Up, I would, before actually, I think the first kind of 2 years of Team Up, I would define my whole self, right? If it failed, I failed. But I'd say just separate yourself from it. It's work. Even though it's mission work and I love it, it's work. And if you care enough, you'll go again in a different direction and try again. And then the second is that start small, think big, act fast. And if you get those 3 things, you learn quickly and you still keep the big vision, but you get to break it down into small steps.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think what really resonates with me is attaching yourself to the success of what you do. And I think that is a really dangerous thing. And actually that's why you also see some startups that are firstly really successful then fail because people don't want to let go, and because it's like them.
Yeah.
And so rather than maybe stepping down or bringing in the right people to take it to the next step, they can't detach themselves from it.
Yeah, founder syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think we are all really bad at identifying with the really negative things, like failure.
Yeah.
And far too often we don't let ourselves also have the opposite side of that, of when you do something really good, you let that build you up. It's like, oh, well, that was a bare minimum. Like I obviously I was going to be successful.
It's very true. When we used to celebrate Team Up, I'd always be too busy. And again, this same best friend was like, you never come to the pub when we like had this milestone. What's up with that? Because we got and it is that. We really need to just take the moment and think, this is it. This is life. Today you're never going to get again. Enjoy, like embrace it. And we say it, but living it and practice it, I think, is where it's at.
Yeah. And I guess going back to your experiences when you're younger, and obviously I can see how that is extremely valuable. And actually so many people that I've interviewed who are really successful have had a similar background where they've had parents who had to work really hard. And like you said, they couldn't show up in certain ways and setting an example to have education. And that, because that was a luxury, like people like have to survive, and that comes first and foremost. I think when you're no longer in survival mode, then you have the luxury to do things like that. But I can see so clearly the value in, I mean, women like yourself, you're obviously so driven and powerful, and obviously loads of other groups of people who aren't represented in levels of leadership. So from your experience, what do you think are the main barriers? So for example, you have someone who comes to you through Journi and they need help to get to C-suite. What do you see as the things that are stopping them, and what do you think are the best things to help someone kind of break through the ceiling?
Good. I promise you I'm not pitching my services. I promise you. But thank you. In which case, no, I'm joking. I think carving out time to answer that question. Many of us get on a hamster wheel of what my manager wants, or what's the urgent deadline for next week, or what. And actually, the real question is, where do you want to get to, and how do you strategically move there? So at Journi, all we do is run coaching programs. We get people who are there, who've landed and arrived at a destination, to coach people who want to get there. And the most powerful part of it is just carving out the time, like having the consistency of one person meeting up with you, asking you probably the same question they asked you last month, because you need to hear it a few times, and coaching you and helping you to discover and get clarity on that, right? Many people who I speak with don't have clarity around what that milestone is. They have clarity on what the issue that they've got with their boss today, or what the issue they have with going back 5 days a week is, or what the issue, but they don't have clarity as to, actually, I want to be there, and this is why 5 days a week doesn't work, or this is why it does work, right? Or I want to be there, and this is why my boss is blocking me. So it's really getting clarity for yourself and creating that power. I think the second thing, and I call that discovery, the second thing is therefore getting them community around you to pull the levers. No person is an island, right? And I think I've been so lucky, and I think it was an early life lesson for me to get people who walk into rooms that I'm just not invited to go and advocate for me. So one of my early mentors was two people, actually, a brilliant man called Mike Kerrison, who worked at Deutsche Bank, and another brilliant man called Nigel Higgins, who's now the chairman of Barclays Bank. Both good friends, both early mentors in my early 20s. And they would obviously, because they were 2 decades older than me at the very least, walk into rooms where there was money, where there were decisions, where there were networks, that they didn't know who I was, and they had no business knowing who I was. But I needed to get sponsorship from them, but I also needed to get mentorship, which is, okay, so now you've opened that door, what do I need to say and do to turn that dial, right? So I call that at Journi our community-powered coaching, because it's coaching which is about you and discovering. Then it's mentoring to help you sharpen your craft and speak the right language to the right people at the right time. And then it's sponsorship, which is opening the doors. And I would say, to get successfully to your next milestone, all three are important. It's almost like having a meal without I don't know, I say having a meal without rice because I have rice with everything I eat, but you just need like all three. You need your protein, your veg and your carbs to really have a good meal. And I'm no nutritionist, by the way, so please don't take that as advice. But that's what I see the power of people missing. And so when I coach people, the first thing I want to ask them the questions around their clarity, and then who's in their circle to help them get to where it is they want to get to.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful. And actually, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, so I was talking about the conversation that we'd have today and what you do.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about how if you grow up without parents or role models who have been to a certain destination, so whether it's kind of in the finance world or, you know, in leadership within a company or founded a business or something like that, you just don't have the language or the tools or the education. And so it's almost like you have to find those parents later on in life, you know?
Yeah.
To then, and it goes back to changing your perspective. I think that is such an important thing. And it's why mentorship is so important, sponsorship, and just talking to people who have those different experiences, because I think it could be as simple as just like someone flicking that switch.
Yeah.
It's like the light bulb moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I
think that's so powerful. And one thing that I do want to ask you about is, of course, when it comes to your family, and, you know, we've spoken about how a lot of them didn't finish school with GCSEs. How is that relationship now? Is it that they've kind of seen your journey and come that journey with you and see education in a different way? You know, or I think sometimes what you see is when you diverge from the status quo of your family, it can create separation. How was that?
Yeah,
They understand when you started working really hard and
yeah. They chuckle because I went the furthest, but I'm not the smartest. I'll tell you that. And it's bittersweet because yeah, they know I'm not. Like, I've got some exceptionally smart people in my family. Something breaks, and I'm the wooden face person. I don't know, and everyone else has figured it out like in half the time that I do. And so I think what's fundamental in any family is trust and love, right? And building those. It doesn't matter who does what, failure, success. If you got that, then that shouldn't be broken. And it's taken a while, like I said, but over the last decade in particular, a lot of trust, a lot of love between me and my parents and me and my siblings. So that's one thing. And then I think early in my career, life has kind of been humbling in many ways, because failure does humble you in many ways. But I would say I was probably arrogant isn't the word. I think I placed too much emphasis on that success. The fact that I got hundreds and thousands of pounds in like my first year of running Team Up, or I did exceptionally well in my GCSEs, etc. I actually subconsciously thought, not that I was better than them, but because I'd done so well with these things, and that's what defines a person, then therefore I was better. Does that make sense? Because a person is those things. And I think life teaches you, oh, all of that stuff is great, but it's there, right? And when you come home and you take off your slippers and you know, TMI, unstrap your bra, for example, all of that stuff doesn't matter. And family is what matters here. So it took me a while to actually learn the difference between success, what success actually is, and the different components of success. Have I been academically successful? Yes. Have I been entrepreneurially successful? Yes. Have I raised millions for the organizations? Yes. Still got lots to learn and lots to achieve, but yes. Family success doesn't play a role there. So I had to learn that. And I think when some of my siblings have had challenges with me, we had to come back to that, which is, so what, right? So what if two of my sisters are a similar age to me and someone else said, oh, I think they're rivaling with you. And one of them I knew wasn't, because we're too close for that. And the other one, I was just like, I don't think she is, but so what? Like, she's got so many other things. At the time, she had a brilliant family and I didn't, and I was single. And I was like, that shit is really important. Like, she's got all of these other assets in life that I don't. So let's not pretend that it's not even comparable. So yeah, I'm talking a lot, but I really want to emphasize that point, because I think, especially as a woman, again, pendulum swinging. 50, 100 years ago, we were only known for a certain number of assets, which were really important, but only that. Then we come into the workplace, right? And we're doing brilliantly given the amount of years that we've been in the workplace. But now I think we're just defining ourselves from that, right? And it's like actually both parts of life plus some other things are really, really important. And let's not sacrifice one for the other. So when family or friends get that inkling of challenge or confrontation or jealousy, which might happen, I call it because I love them too much to not call it and let that fester.
Yeah.
And then I show them that it's a facet of life and that's okay, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how I normally handle it, whether it's family or friends.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful as well. I love the fact that you're talking how it's so important. I mean, you spoke earlier as well, not to define yourself by kind of this external material things, and you know, see that there's so many different ways to succeed. And also something that my family had to check me on as well is like, not everyone wants a certain life.
Yeah.
So, you know, you might be pushing someone because you think that's what success looks like, but I don't want that. What's important to me is family, or, you know, and it is kind of humbling and takes reflection.
And I have to sell myself, like scrolling on, I'm not on the other social media as much, but LinkedIn, and you see so-and-so, what, there is that much, or oh my God, they reached that milestone. And then I remember, I think it was more tiredness than anything else, but about 2 weeks ago before I went on holiday, I was just scrolling tired, and then someone hit a milestone and I could feel the envy.
Yeah.
And then I had to talk to myself and say, they deserve it. 1, because I know how hard they work. 2, be inspired, don't be envious. And 3, so what? Like, I know that as being human being, doesn't matter how successful, you're still going to have some great days and you're still going to have some terrible days. They're going to have both of those. They've just done it at a different level. Does that make sense? So I think I have to also speak to myself when I get into those kind of mental moments.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was actually going to kind of wrap this conversation up with asking the advice you'd give to your younger self, but I almost thought that bit of advice was like really good. Maybe just in kind of one sentence, what would you go back and say to young SJ?
Young SJ, and probably SJ still today. When you're feeling emotional about anything, you can call it so what, but I think the longer version of that is, why does it matter? Because normally, like seeing a friend do exceptionally well revenue-wise their business, it matters because I want to meet that economics milestone, and that's great, right? But I had to ask myself that question. Why is this mattering to me? Why am I feeling envious? Why am I feeling like a failure in this moment? Oh, because they've got 3 times the amount of revenue that I've got. Why does that matter? Oh, because I want 3 times revenue in my business. Great, good, inspired, get back on it. And when I use it, like even at home, when me and my partner, if we're frustrated with each other, why does it matter? Like, why have you left that? Why does it matter? Because I just need clarity of space right now, because I've got a deadline tomorrow and I don't want to be thinking about picking up this thing off the floor, right? So pausing in every moment of great emotion or difficult emotion and asking yourself, why does it matter? Because in that moment, you learn so much about yourself that you weren't discovering when you're at the kind of surface level. So that's what I would advise myself yesterday and today.
Thank you. That was amazing. Just thank you for this whole conversation. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. And this is my first visual podcast, so I appreciate it.